For the first time during this college basketball season, the boys are back. Rick Broering from the Musketeer Report, Chad Brendel from Bearcat Journal. All right, let me ask you first, Rick, about Xavier and the big win on Friday night over Michigan. Just how significant of a win is that to go into Chrysler and beat them in Ann Arbor?
Well, regardless of where Michigan ends up or how good Michigan is at this point, which is questionable right now,
sure,
it's a top 25 road win. And at the end of the season, that's gold. When the selection committee is searching and looking through your resume, a top 25 road win is what you need. Xavier saved themselves by winning the shootout at UC last year. This time, they're not going to have that luxury, so this was a huge win for them.
Saved themselves and then obviously advanced all the way to the Sweet 16, so sometimes you get the right combination of wins late, and it can really launch yourself in terms of momentum. Let's talk about your team, the Bearcats. This looks like a team, and look, I know it's really early, but it looks like a team that is not going to have to win games 66-62 every night. They can score some points. Do you attribute it to more talent, different philosophy, shot clock being down to 30?
Their pace, their tempo is a lot faster, which we had long said is the biggest issue. You know, everybody, what offense are they running? Or
Sure.
It was pace, it was tempo. Now they're playing a little bit faster. They're getting into their offense and getting production out of their offense a little bit quicker. And, you know, the shot clock thing, I'm sure, helped that along some. I think a lot of it was Mick Cronin sitting out last year and watching and going, we gotta do something a little different. And the big difference now, 90% of the time, there are 5 guys on the floor that can score. Yeah. And for a long time, that wasn't the case.
It's an interesting point you make. You think the health sabbatical, for lack of a better term, may have helped Mick in terms of what he wanted to do going forward.
I think when you sit there and watch, you know, he talked about it some last year. When you're coaching, it's we got to win the next game. We got to win the next game. We got to win the next game. When you're sitting back and you've got a notepad and you're taking down notes and you're watching games go 53-52, I'm sure one of the notes is, this is really hard to watch.
Yeah.
We need to do something a little different.
Makes sense. And what we saw transpire in Michigan was really interesting in Ann Arbor because did Edmund Sumner kind of take a stranglehold on that point guard position? Do we know going forward, or will it be more of a ride the hot hand?
Well, I think Edmund's really taken the point guard position over from the get-go. I mean, he did it in the preseason. He clearly was the starter coming into the season, played starter minutes. And his first game, I mean, when you look back to the Miami game, Miami did a good job downing ball screens and really trying to make Xavier play more instinctual, more one-on-one, and not pass the ball and use all that ball movement. They put pressure on the freshman point guard, Edmund Sumner, and he responded. He was really aggressive, and he's just a matchup problem. But when he's very similar to Samaje Christon. But when Samaje Christon was that age, he was the only option. Other teams were focusing on him. This team, Edmund's a third or fourth option, so teams have a third or fourth defender, and then he becomes a nightmare to match up with.
You know, we talked about the big jump we looked forward to seeing last year from Jalen Reynolds going from freshman to sophomore, and we'll talk more about Jalen in a second. From freshman to sophomore with Trayvon Blewett, how much more are you expecting to see now? Because that 1 year is a huge difference in college basketball.
It really is, and he had a nice freshman season last year, but the biggest thing with him, and Chad knows this because we both watched him play a ton in high school and AAU, he was a supremely confident player. I mean, he played with big-time Division I talents his whole career, and every time you watched him play, there was no doubt about who was getting the ball on offense on that team because he was so confident. Last year at Xavier, you know, you had Matt Stainbrook, you had D. Davis. He deferred a little bit more. This year, I don't think we'll see that. He wants the ball. He proved that in the Missouri game.
And Corianti DeBerry on your side for UC looks like a completely different player and should help immeasurably this season.
Well, the biggest thing is you're not going to have Octavius Ellis out there for 35 minutes a game. You're going to be able to get him some rest, and when you get him some rest, you're bringing in a guy that can legitimately put points on the board. He lost 30 pounds. You know, usually everybody, this guy added 15, this guy added 20. He dropped 30 pounds in the offseason, so a lot more mobile, and he can go for longer stretches.
And still a big kid. Talk about Justin Jennifer. Is he one of those guys who helps Mick Cronin change that pace you were talking about earlier in terms of playing a little bit faster, playing a little more efficiently in the full court?
Yeah, he's definitely a high-speed, high-energy, up and down the floor kind of guy. Rick and I both wondered when we saw him in AAU how exactly it would translate. You're starting to see now he's not a big offensive threat with his scoring, although he has had some nice games, you know, 8, 7, 8, 9, 10 points. But he's such a threat passing the basketball. The defenses are almost on skates when he's coming down the floor with the ball in his hand. And he's completely different than Troy Copane, who is a big, strong, power, downhill guy.
And more of a shooter.
Yeah. And Jennifer's just going to come at you. He's going to get in the lane, collapse the defense, and make plays.
All right, let me ask you about the Crosstown Classic, or Crosstown Shootout, rather.
Shootout.
Back to shootout. And this year it takes place at a time when it should take place, during the non-conference season. I don't think these teams should have to step out of conference to play this game late in the year like they did last year. If they were to play it now, Rick, what do you think would happen?
I really don't know. I mean, I don't know what will happen in a couple of weeks when they play it. This is going to be one of the most fun shootouts we've seen, possibly 2 top 25 teams. There's nothing else going on other than I think the Army-Navy game is that day on the sports calendar. So, I mean, the whole world should be focusing on this game if you're into college basketball. And to be quite honest, I think it's going to be a great game. I think both teams can score it this year. I think both teams are better defensively than they were a year ago, which is saying something.
Especially with his team, yeah.
Yeah, I really don't know. I think it's a complete toss-up.
Very quickly, what do you think would happen?
The fun part about it now is in the past there's always been this is the star guy for this team, for that team. For both teams, they're so balanced.
There really is a lot of balance. You're right.
I mean,
we don't even have a storyline.
Yeah, both teams are 8 or 9 deep, and you don't know coming into that game who's going to come out the star.
Right. There's no storyline of this team should win, or this team has strengths and this team has weaknesses. They're very similar.
Right now they're both very good and have the chance for a really good season and should put on a great show at CINCINNATI.
Rick Broering from the Musketeer Report, Chad Brendel from Bearcat Journal. Thank you guys so much for being here, and obviously we'll welcome you back once we get into the conference season.